Lucha Underground, Lucha Underground, Lucha Underground. What can we say about Lucha Underground except for the fact that at least for one of these two people who are talking to you right now, it was pretty much kind of a redemption for professional wrestling entirely. Maybe not the best wrestling program that has ever existed or the best year in wrestling that has ever been, but certainly a lot better than most of the stuff that is out there. And unfortunately, season 1 is done. They're still working on getting season 2. It's just a matter of knocking out money type issues right now. But fortunately, it looks like it's 99% that we are going to get a season 2, which is good because Ultima Lucha definitely left me wanting more. And that's a good thing in this case.
Right.
Ultima Lucha, which is, of course, Spanish for the final fight, or the last fight, was the season finale for Lucha Underground. In storyline-wise, designed by Dario Cueto to be kind of the, for lack of a better phrase, WrestleMania for Lucha Underground.
Mm-hmm.
And it delivered pretty well. Although pretty much every single match, with the exception of one, basically ended up being a hardcore match, for lack of a better phrase. But, underground fighting ring kind of comes with the territory. So, let's start with the first night of Ultima Lucha. It was aired on July 29th. And it had 3 matches because it was a regular 1-hour show. But it started off with a recap, basically, of the storyline so far, with Dario Cueto in this very nice suit, going to talk to this lady called Black Lotus, whom he'd kept captured at some point in the middle of the season, and put into a cell right across the hallway from his very monstrous brother, Matanza. And he's basically kind of taunting Black Lotus, for lack of a better phrase. But while he's there, he also talks to Black Lotus about the things that have been going on during the season. And notable, he says, I thought that maybe being across from Matanza would have changed your mind about him. Because you see, he's not the one who killed your family. That was your old mentor, El Dragon Azteca. Here's the funny thing, the interesting thing about Dario Cueto. He is, by all accounts, a very smug snake. He is very clearly a dirty businessman. And he doesn't even bother to hide it. He's slimy, he's creepy, and he's so much fun to watch. And he's completely honest about it. Sometimes he might mislead you or try to manipulate you, but it seemed at many times that even in his lies there is an element of truth. Which we'll get back to in night 2. The first match of the night was a Falls Count Anywhere match, and every time there's a Falls Count Anywhere match, I get a little annoyed because if you want to be technical, Falls Count Anywhere should still be a disqualification capable. Just by the name of the match. If you really wanted to split hairs, Falls Count Anywhere only means that you can get a pin or submission at any place in the arena other than the ring. Or even in the ring if you're so inclined. But given, again, that Lucha Underground is basically an underground fighting ring in one of the worst neighborhoods of Los Angeles, Boyle Heights, it kind of makes sense that it would also be no disqualification as well, especially when you consider the storyline of the two competitors, Cage and the Mac. Cage was just getting all kinds of pissed that the Mac had been getting the better of him on repeated occasions, mostly due to the fact that Cage has a little bit of an anger management problem. In fact, at one point earlier in the season, he actually destroyed the original Lucha Underground title because he couldn't win it from Prince Puma, who was the champion at the time. And it just got to the point where the night before Ultima Lucha, they just started having a big old knockdown, drag-out brawl, to which Dario Cueto popped up and said, "Enough! Y'all want to tear each other apart? Y'all want to kill each other? Fine, but you're doing it on my terms because this is my show." So he set it up as a Falls Count Anywhere match, and of course said that there would be several weapons laid about the temple precisely so that they can beat the hell out of each other. And beat the hell out of each other they did. There was one really funny moment in the night, though. At one point, the Mac went back and found kind of like an igloo lunch cooler and smacked Cage upside the head of it, and Miller Lights, who is, by the way, a sponsor of Lucha Underground, just flew out all over the floor, along with some ice. So he picked up a couple of them, cracked them open, slammed them together, chugged them down, and then did the Stone Cold Stunner on the Mac, complete with Stone Cold Salute afterwards. Which, by the way, in case you're wondering, yes, Stone Cold Steve Austin did see that. And yes, he thought it was cool. Ultimately, though, the match went on top of Dario Cueto's office, which had been reinforced since in a previous previous match at some point earlier in the season, someone actually got chokeslammed all the way through it. I believe it was Phoenix in a death match against Mil Muertes. And so it had been reinforced, which, of course, was two big guys like Cage and the Mac. Definite necessity. And Cage ultimately got the win by doing his version of the curb stomp, which is basically just pulls the arms back and pushes the head down into the mat or the floor. Only this time, there was a cinder block between Mac's head and the floor, which got him the 1-2-3. A pretty good little brawling match there. Not something too special. But we have seen many times in other promotions where brawling matches can be done poorly. And yeah, this was definitely not one that was done poorly.
Yeah.
Next match on the card was a 6-person tag team match for the Lucha Underground Trios Championship. Why do I say 6-person instead of 6-man? Well, because the defending champions going into this were a couple of guys named Angelico and Son of Havoc, and a woman by the name of Ivelisse, who are colloquially known as Team Dysfunction because they were originally semi-jobbers that got forced together into a team by Dario Cueto, and then managed to have just enough chemistry where they won the Trios Championship.
That was awesome. They became that little Rocky storyline there.
Yeah. But unfortunately, they had to go up against a team with a very big, well, let's just say trope unlocked names you want to run away from really fast here. The Disciples of Death. Their individual names for these three individuals are Trece, which is, of course, Spanish for 13. Don't have to tell you what that means, what that's about. El Sinestro de la Muerte, which means either the Calamity of Death or the Left Hand of Death, depending on how you interpret Sinestro. And, well, I don't know how I'm going to be able to explain this without accidentally sounding racist, so I would like to apologize in advance. Barrio Negro, which literally translated means black neighborhood, but is a Mexican colloquial term meaning the most drug-infested, gang-infested, kind of slummy neighborhood that you are not likely to get out of alive if you are born into it. Lovely names, huh?
Yeah.
And they were accompanied to the ring by their manager, a femme fatale by the name of Katrina, who has this dark stone that seems to have this magical powers over the Disciples of Death and over the aforementioned Mil Muertes, but we'll get to that later. All I have to say about this match is, one, Ivelisse wrestling this match with a legitimately broken foot. Girl's a baller. Girl is a real baller. I know if I had a broken foot, I'd be like, can't I just manage a wrestler for a while? I don't think I can go, man. Can I just manage somebody for a while? I can still talk. My foot doesn't prevent me from talking. But Ivelisse went out there on crutches and still got into the mix of it. At one point, beating down Katrina. And Angelico, you crazy motherfucker. He's been doing this stuff all season. He will find the highest point possible in the temple and launch himself off of it to splash all of the things. The dude's insane. And I also saw him, a little side note, wrestling at the most recent Triple Mania before the audio issues annoyed me into submission. Yeah, he's pretty much like that all the time. Yeah, he's pretty much balls to the wall all the time. But, unfortunately, the Disciples of Death were too strong for Team Dysfunction, and they won the Trios Championship, with Katrina giving what Matt Stryker referred to as the most provocative lick of death to Ivelisse, which is kind of a thing she does after a foe has been vanquished, or sometimes before a foe is about to be vanquished, to kind of give them a warning that they're fucked.
Right.
Third match of night one is a really, really interesting one. This is kind of... I've seen a match type like this before in TNA. It is a lumberjack strap match, or in Lucha Underground parlance, the Believer's Backlash. Why is it called this? Well, because at one point, one of the competitors, Hernandez, also from TNA, really got on the bad side of the Lucha Underground faithful, because he took a belt from someone and started choking out his opponent for this match, Drago, and really started laying into the fans saying, you guys are idiots for believing that this guy is actually part dragon, or a dragon, or a human with the spirit of a dragon. I have no idea. At any rate, he was laying into the believers saying, you believe that this guy is something special when he's just a man. And I am going to show you all that he ain't shit. So Dario Cueto calls Hernandez into his office and says, you know, the believers are really pissed off at you, man. They are really pissed off at you. And, you know, it's my policy here to make sure that, you know, that it's an inclusive environment for anyone who wants to fight. The believers really want to kick your ass. So I'm going to let them. I'm going to have them sign waivers. I'm going to give a bunch of them leather belts. And whenever you go outside the ring, they are going to be authorized to beat the living shit out of you. To which Hernandez very snarkily replied, well, you better make sure they sign their waivers, because if one of them hits me, I'm going to hit back. Guess what didn't get to happen?
He didn't hit a believer back?
He never got a chance. Because, well, first, for comparison's sake, every time Drago went out of the ring, the believers would just step back away or maybe, like, pat him on the back and encourage him onward. Whenever Hernandez got thrown out of the ring, it was like flies on a stake. Vroom. Massive swarm of humanity to slap the shit out of Hernandez. In fact, at one point, Hernandez ducked underneath the ring, and one of the believers, I think it was the lead singer of the Counting Crows, had everybody spread out around the ring, had people on each side of the ring just waiting for him to pop up somewhere to whack him whenever his ugly face showed up. And of course, it wasn't all about the believers. Drago was really impressive in this, too. At one point, Hernandez tried to do his Superman splash over the top rope, only to get caught in the face by Dragon Mist. Crash, burn, cue the swarm. And then at another point, the believers actually did not stay on Hernandez all the time. They did back off at one point, when Drago broke out some nunchucks. Because Drago is also apparently a ninja as well as a Dragonborn. And I'm speaking Dragonborn in D&D terms, so sorry Skyrim fans. Yeah, he started breaking out the nunchucks. And as soon as Hernandez turned around, whack, right on the head. Suffice it to say, Drago won. That leads us into the postscript for Night 1, which is the green-masked luchador by the name of El Dragon Azteca showing up to the Lucha Underground warehouse, only to be stopped by a youth in a white hoodie that he had rescued at the very, very beginning of the season in the cold open. And this youth in the white hoodie says, "Are you going to try and go in there?" "Well, yeah. If you do that, there's a prophecy that says you're going to die. I have to go rescue Black Lotus." "Why don't we get Prince Puma to do that? He helped us out earlier." "He's got his own battles to fight right now. I have to be the one to do this." "Oh, okay, your funeral." In goes El Dragon Azteca, and the door slams shut. Now for Night 2. Night 2 starts off with Dragon Azteca going down to the basement of the warehouse to confront Dario Cueto. And Dario taunts him by saying, "So, you dared to step into the temple, knowing full and well what the consequences were going to be. You realize now I am authorized to kill you." And he's like, "Yeah, so? If you're going to do it, go ahead and do it." No, I didn't say I was going to do it." And then Black Lotus grabs him in a chokehold, and after a little deliberation, delivers a massive palm heel to his back. To which Dario Cueto responds, "Well, now a war has begun. If you want to live, you're going to have to come with me." So, he lets Black Lotus out of the cell, and Black Lotus reluctantly decides to go with Dario, only to stop and look over at Matanza and says, "So what are we going to do about him?" Dario Cueto lets him out of his cell saying, "Well, of course, he's going to come with us. We have to find a new temple. This place isn't safe anymore." And so begins Night 2. There was actually a dark match for Ultima Lucha, one that did not air, but we're not going to go too deep into it because, it's consequential to the actual product itself. I will just go to say that there were quite a bit of people in an 11-man battle royal for a $100,000 bonus, and the person who won this was the mariachi who plays for tips, El Mariachi Loco.
That's got to be one hell of a tip.
Yeah, I don't think he'll have to worry about working at the restaurant for at least a year, depending on how he spends it. Anyway, the first actual match of this 2-hour special was from a couple of WWE cast-offs who have really shined since leaving WWE. Johnny Mundo, who formerly went as John Morrison or Johnny Nitro, and Alberto El Patron, nephew of the legendary Mil Máscaras, who was formerly known as Alberto Del Rio. The storyline for this was basically that Patron, the AAA Megas champion, came into Lucha Underground and immediately started going around like he owned the place. Mundo, who of course has had some interactions with Del Rio in the past in other promotions, WWE, took exception to this and decided to bury the hatchet with his longtime rival from episode number 1, Dario Cueto, just to get a shot at Patron. Even at one point, throwing Patron through the window of Dario Cueto's office. So, they finally got a singles match here at Ultima Lucha. And really, if you've seen these two wrestle in WWE, forget everything you saw there. Because this is definitely steps up from what you've seen there. I mean, El Patron is still kind of a more technical wrestler type. That's just the kind of style that he's got. Probably influenced by the likes of his father and his uncle. And of course, Johnny Mundo is still very parkour influenced. But he's able to do a lot more with it, since he's not being limited by, the basic story frame that WWE matches tend to have. It was a very back and forth match, as two competitors of these caliber are tending to do. And at one point, Johnny Mundo actually took some dust that had collected out from underneath the ring and threw it in Patron's face to get an edge. And ultimately, though, Alberto El Patron looked like he was going to have the win. But in comes one very familiar Latina. She does the splits. She screams a lot. And she has a lot of history with Mundo. Yes, Melina has come to Lucha Underground. And she clocked Patron in the head with his own Megas Championship belt. Starship Pain, or End of the World as it's called now, 1, 2, 3, and Johnny Mundo and Melina celebrate a victory, which is cut short when Patron catches Johnny Mundo and throws him through a window. Because reciprocity. And then he took Melina, bent her over his knee, and spanked her, which was really kind of awkward for many, many reasons. Especially for those of us who consider themselves feminists. But hey, anyway, coming up next is the match that is known as a Cero Miedo match. No disqualification match. Anything goes between Pentagon Jr. and Vampiro. And what set this up was, at one point in the season, Pentagon Jr. started going on a spree of breaking people's arms. At one point, he targeted ring announcer Melissa Santos and tried to break her arm, only to get stopped by Sexy Star, who was this very attractive lady wrestler who goes against anybody, and at least in Lucha Underground parlance, really, really hates bullies. So, Pentagon Jr. starts targeting her, and goes to try and break her arm, only to have Vampiro, or Ian Hodgkinson, who is one of the ring announcers, come into the ring and stop him from doing that. At that point, Pentagon Jr. starts going on a crusade, saying that his master has deemed it necessary for him to destroy Vampiro. So he goes on taunting Vampiro, calling him out, and at one point knocking him down, dousing him with gasoline, and holding up a lighter, saying, "If you don't face me at Ultima Lucha, you are going to burn alive." Did I mention Pentagon Jr. is twisted as fuck?
I actually have vaguely heard of him, but
he's from AAA as well. In fact, a lot of these people are from AAA.
Right.
Drago's from AAA.
Right.
But ultimately, Vampiro relented. So we have this match, the Cero Miedo match, which is Spanish for no fear, and is kind of Pentagon Jr.'s catchphrase. And it's even got its own little hand signal. 3 fingers up with a circle, 3 fingers down for the M. And Vampiro comes down, dressed as a dark pope in long black robes with purple lettering, big old, the pope hat, holding an incense censer. He was swinging back and forth as he was going down the stairs. Not gonna lie, though, Vampiro looked old as shit. I mean, at this point, he'd been retired for about a decade. Creeping up on 50. So, dude is no spring chicken, and honestly, I think that's part of what influenced it becoming a no disqualification match. Because when you have someone who can't really go that well in the ring anymore, you have to kind of get creative. You have to book your match in ways that will cover the weaknesses of the weakest member in the match. So in this case, they give us a garbage hardcore match. Not gonna lie, was hard to watch. I'm not a fan of such kinds of matches. I'm not a fan of a lot of blood and gore. So, every time they'd hit a big spot, like being slammed on the thumbtacks, or having a fluorescent light bulb slammed on them, which is extremely dangerous because those things do have mercury in them, vaporized mercury. If anyone in that temple comes down with mercury poisoning, God help them. Honestly, it was hard for me to watch. It ultimately ended, though, with Vampiro setting up a flaming table, ostensibly to slam Pentagon Jr. through it, only for it to be reversed and to have Pentagon Jr. slam him through it. And strangely, after the match ended, Vampiro started calling out to Pentagon Jr., saying, essentially, go ahead, break my arm. Curious.
Yeah, weird.
So Pentagon Jr. complies, and then grabs a microphone and calls out to his master, saying, "Where are you, master? I have done what you asked. Where are you?" And Vampiro starts laughing, grabs a microphone, gets up, and says, and this is put into my own words here, "I'm proud of you, my student." I'm just going to let that sit for a while. I believe you can figure out what that means by yourself.
Yep.
So yeah, Vampiro is Pentagon Jr.'s master. Which is weird considering that Pentagon Jr. clearly has some ninja influences in his design and his fighting style, whereas Vampiro has been pretty much Japan and Mexico and, North America exclusive. I mean, he was in WCW for a while. But yeah, one of the most dark and twisted characters in wrestling in the last couple of decades is now the master of the current most dark and twisted and sadistic member of the Lucha Underground roster. Boy, is that going to be fun to watch in Season 2. Alright, fourth match of the night is the big 7-way Battle Royal for the inaugural Gift of the Gods Championship. For those of you who may not be aware what the Gift of the Gods Championship is, think Money in the Bank done better. In fact, they've even taken some shots at the Money in the Bank during the build-up to this. What happened was, over the course of several weeks, Dario Cueto introduced these little round medallions that are supposedly Aztec gold. And individually, they are symbols of affluence and power in and of themselves. So whoever holds them definitely has some esteem about them and may in fact have to ward off other people who want them. But much like the Dragon Balls, when all 7 are combined, they grant the user one wish. In this case, the one wish is a title shot against the Lucha Underground champion. But while you do have to give a week advance notice in order for Dario Cueto to promote it, because that's kind of his thing, if you wait too long before you announce your intention to go after the Lucha Underground Championship, you are going to have to defend it as if it were a championship itself. So basically, it works much like how the Intercontinental Championship did in the 80s of the WWF. Granted, you've seen people, quote-unquote, defend the Money in the Bank Championship a few times in WWE, but it's never done consistently. This is something you can bank on. Pardon the pun. If you have this belt, you are going to be a target for everyone else on the roster who wants what you have. So, here are the 7 competitors that had medallions going into Ultima Lucha. Phoenix, also from AAA. Aerostar, AAA alumnus. Bengala, I think also AAA. King Cuerno, known as, if I remember correctly, Hijo del Fantasma in AAA. Jack Evans, who also wrestles in AAA. Sexy Star, who, despite being a mega face in Lucha Underground, is actually a pretty big rudo in AAA. Really big heel over there. Was also part of the Atomicos tag match at the beginning of Triple Mania, but that's neither here nor there. And Big Rick, who is the only one out of this crew who did not win his Aztec medallion. He actually got it awarded to him by Dario Cueto in a backroom deal. Also, those of you who are watching this and wondering if he looks familiar, that's because he used to be known as Ezekiel Jackson. During the course of this match, we had some rivalries show up. For instance, Phoenix and King Cuerno have been kind of going at it for a little bit. They often went up against each other quite a bit during this match. Also during the match, Sexy Star won her medallion from a friend of hers called Superfly. No, not Jimmy Snuka, different guy. But was immediately challenged for it by this really, really crazy guy by the name of Marty the Moth Martinez. Because he looked at the medallion and said, "This is the Moth medallion. It belongs to my Aztec clan, the Moths. Did I mention I'm part of the Moth clan?" And of course, every time he mentions the Moth clan, everybody's like, "Really? Moth? That's the best your clan could come up with as their spirit animal?" But yeah, he tried to interfere in this battle royal, and Sexy Star, my girl, kicked his ass. Big Rick also got interfered with in this match by someone whom he was employed with for a short period of time. Delavar Daivari, if that name sounds familiar, is because he used to be known as Khosrow Daivari in the WWE, and also Sheikh Abdul Bashir in TNA, but we don't talk about those dark times, who apparently was mad that Big Rick went behind his back and got that deal with Dario Cueto. So Daivari came in, smacked him with a chair, and then said, "You're fired." By the way, Delavar Daivari, better hair than Donald Trump. There are plenty of great spots in this match, though. One of my favorite spots from one of these wrestlers actually comes from King Cuerno. Because there's always one point where his opponent, or in this case opponents, are sitting outside of the ring. And King Cuerno, Cuerno meaning horn, has kind of this, hunter motif. Only in this case he hunts the most dangerous game. Since apparently he's killed every other animal known to man. He does this maneuver where he bounces off of the near ropes to this group, rebounds and bounces off of the far rope, and then shoots himself straight through the top and second rope onto everybody. It is affectionately called Arrow from the Depths of Hell. And it's amazing to watch. Ultimately, though, the two left in the ring were Phoenix and Jack Evans. Phoenix took the 1-2-3, and he is the inaugural Gift of the Gods champion. Which means at some point in Season 2, he is going to get a guaranteed shot